The government kind of sat on it like a chicken on an egg for almost 5 years. Gender, class, caste, discrimination is rampant. It's systemic. It's completely normalized. This monopoly of control that the men have, by the way, affects everybody in the industry. It just affects women most detrimentally. Hello everybody, like I promised, I'm going to be doing a lot of conversations with members of the WCC or the Women in Cinema Collective, because what they've achieved is really quite remarkable. And what we are experiencing currently is going to be, when we look back, a milestone in the battle for equal rights and the feminist movement in India. I'm talking today to Miriam Joseph, who's a producer, who's part of the WCC, and who has worked not just in Kerala, but with other film industries, especially the Hindi film industry in Mumbai. She also teaches film students the craft and process of film production and filmmaking. So this is going to be a conversation where we can go into the details of the Hema Committee Report and many of the things that have come to light thanks to this report. Miriam, thank you for making time. It is a historic moment. I think when we look back, we'll realize how important this work that you all have put in since 2017 has been. I mean, this actually should have been a moment in 2019 and early 2020, isn't it? This moment is late. It should have. We were very grateful and very glad when the Kerala government instituted this committee with Justice Hema to study the situation of women in the Malayalam film industry. We were very hopeful that what the government intended was to get the study and then work on it to address the issues that it raised. But instead, the government kind of sat on it like a chicken on an egg for almost 5 years. And we just couldn't understand why. Because from the very beginning, we at WCC have said, publish the report, redact what needs to be redacted. We, more than most people, are very well aware of what a lack of privacy can do to people, because we are at the receiving end of lots of that stuff. So we've been asking for a redacted report forever. But for reasons known only to the government, they chose to sit on it until their hand was forced by the Right to Information Commissioner and the courts. It's sad that that needed to be the case, but we're very glad that it's out, finally. Redacted or not, we're very happy that it's out. It becomes quite clear why the government sat on it, because once you read this report, it is hair-raising in parts, it's excruciating in parts, but once you read it, it cannot be status quo. Or am I being very optimistic? I mean, that is the only reason I would imagine the government sat on it, because it cannot be status quo now that this report and its details are public. People over the last week have been asking me, are you shocked? It's so shocking. Whatever we're hearing is so shocking. And I'm like, well, no, we're not shocked. We're saddened. We're enraged. And we have been that way for the 7 years since the organization was formed.
In 2017.
In 2017, the circumstances under which women got together to form this organization. So it's this report doesn't shock us, because the reason we went after shouting for change, fighting for change, is because we're aware of most of the things in this report. We know what's happening in there. Many of our members are victims of it. Many of our members have suffered a great deal at the hands of the power structures in the Malayalam film industry. So we're not shocked. We remain as enraged as we were on the day we were formed, because these things haven't changed. And there is such a all-pervasive culture of feudalism, for want of a better word, in the Malayalam film industry. I mean, it's shocking that this happens in Kerala, where apparently we pride ourselves on having thrown off the shackles of feudalism. But clearly that memo didn't reach the Malayalam film industry. Gender, class, caste, discrimination is rampant. It's systemic. It's completely normalized. It's never questioned until WCC decided to raise its head. So,
and you alluded to the fact that you had to the WCC came into being in 2017. For people who don't know, this is the infamous case of a Malayali actress, female actor being kidnapped and sexually assaulted at the behest of a very, very well-known film star, Dilip, and there is a case that has been fought. And this was the trigger for the WCC, because this became symbolic of what women were having to deal with in this film industry. Miriam, when a government-appointed committee says that it sees you, it records what you have experienced, and it accepts that this kind of sexual misbehavior and everything that has been hearsay so far and has been experienced is acknowledged. You are seen. What does that mean? And what is the kind of impact it will have for women's rights? I'll go into some of the details later. But, before we get in, what is the big picture impact this will have?
I think the best way to kind of illustrate the big picture impact is how in the last week since the report has been published, so many women have chosen to speak up publicly about incidents that have happened 5, 6, 10, 15 years prior. All of these women had had these experiences when WCC was formed, when we were asking for women to join us and to talk to us, but they weren't. They weren't going to do it because they were scared. They were intimidated. They knew that the consequences of speaking up and raising their heads above the parapet meant that they would lose any chance of a livelihood in an art form that they wanted to work in an industry that they had chosen to be in. But in this last week, post the publication of the report, so many women, every single day, more and more women speaking up publicly, showing their faces. I think that says a lot. And to me, what it says is that a government-appointed committee gives legitimacy to the issues that women have faced, because those very issues have been dismissed, trivialized, invisibilized by the powers that be. And the powers that be in the Malayalam film industry are men. Like in most other industries, men control the Malayalam film industry. And what WCC fights is the monopoly of control they have, but more importantly, how they wield that control. The whole world is a patriarchal world. We live in a patriarchal world. We're not blinkered people. But most places in the 21st century have begun to understand that there are basic standards of decency that we would all like to have in our places of work. And somehow in Kerala, that just hasn't been the case.
Didn't get the memo, as you said, right?
Did not get the memo. So this idea that they can be feudal, that they can be, that they can wield their power with
just impunity.
Violence.
It's
a kind of violence, and I don't mean physical violence only. I mean a violence where they use their power to show you your place constantly. Oh, you're a girl, you have an opinion? Oh, I'm going to show you your place. तुम वो लक्ष्मण रेखा के पीछे नहीं खड़ी हो जाएगी? चलो दिखाते हैं. It's that kind of impunity and a kind of violence that is quite shocking, like I said, in a place like Kerala, where, because every time you talk to people about this, they say, really? In Kerala? But y'all are so progressive.
I want to quote something KB Valsala Kumari, one of the three members of that Hema committee, had to say, and she's a retired bureaucrat, of the Kerala government, and she's as one of the secretaries of the Kerala government. She said, and I'm quoting her, "Incident by incident, as the narration progressed, many icons started crumbling. These are people who have the influence and power to change the course of Malayalam movies. Unfortunately, these are the very same people who, by their acts of commission and omission, are contributing to the degeneration of the profession." What was interesting when you read the report is how these three ladies, especially Justice Hema and KB Valsala Kumari, because T. Sharda is from the industry, but these two ladies were really quite shocked as they went along, documenting what people were putting forward. I mean, these are some of the best known, most powerful people with sterling reputations. Why did they do this?
Like I said earlier, this monopoly of control that the men in Malayalam cinema have, they choose to use that control to the detriment of women. And when I use those words advisedly, it is a choice on their part. Because even if nothing made them want to change before, the last 5 years, with the presence of WCC and us continually raising these issues with them, members from within, our members who were members of the AMMA, for example, who tried to raise issues from within the organization, finally had to leave because it was made very clear to them that nothing was going to change, that ethics didn't matter, that decency didn't matter, that they were going to look after their own, and that's all that mattered to them. That kind of impunity, that is scary. And I can understand why both Justice Hema and Ms. Valsala Kumari were so shocked. Ms. Sharda, not so shocked because she's been in the industry so long and she, I think, knows what it's like. The other two were genuinely shocked. One's from the legal profession, one's a civil servant, a very high-ranking civil servant, and they'd never seen or heard anything like this. It is a Kerala-wide societal issue. There is no doubt about that. But it just is so blatant in the film industry. You can get away with so much more in the film industry because it is an informal industry. It is highly unregulated, and the report talks about so many things that really would just, in most places, like you said, those are criminal acts. People would have been put in jail for that. But here, people have been allowed to carry on doing that. These are unions. These are legitimate unions which have been indulging in intimidation, extortion, exploitation. And these are not my words. These are the words of the report. So it's not, we members of the WCC are very regularly called troublemakers, feminicis. Feminici is a kind of derogatory term that Malayali men derive to describe us for having the temerity to speak up. But honestly, somebody like a Justice Hema or Valsala Kumari, who would never be called a feminici, they are outraged by this, as they should be, and as should be anybody who wants to live in a decent world. Because this monopoly of control that the men have, by the way, affects everybody in the industry. It just affects women most detrimentally, right? That's the case. It affects men very badly. The class and caste discrimination, also part of the report, are horrific. They're horrendous. It is feudal. Really, there's no other word to use. This is feudal. So, yeah, there's lots of things that need to be done. But I think, first of all, just a little self-awareness from within the industry of people to kind of look inward and say, hey, you know what? We don't want to be these kind of people. We want to do things differently. I think that's a useful mindset to come to these problems with, you know.
Given that they knew that, okay, this is being recorded, there's a committee, there's resistance, WCC is putting up a resistance, questions are being asked, there's this really high profile case in the courts. Was there any pockets of change, or was it just business as usual?
I think you have to look at this in 2 or 3 different ways, right? One is who has control in the Malayalam film industry? Who allows for the kind of terrible practices? Who allows for that? And then the people who work in the industry, right? So the people who control the industry are a very, very small minority. There is a large majority of people who work in that industry without questioning these inequalities. And then there's the women. I would say that there has been virtually no change at all in the group of people that control and that make decisions within the industry. I think there has certainly been a kind of mindset change within the larger group of people that make films. The younger generation of filmmakers and film workers are slightly less dyed in the wool, let's put it that way. But not enough to kind of join the fight for change. They also enjoy the benefits of what this system gives them. So, but there has been some change. There's also been change foisted on them, right? So, for example, after the Supreme Court made it the law of the land to have internal complaints committees in every workplace, the Kerala film industry, that means the Producers Association, the Kerala Film Chamber of Commerce, the AMA, the Artists Associations, FEFCA, the main unions, they all, with great impunity, said, nope, we don't need to do that. So WCC had to go to court to get these organizations to follow the law of the land put into place by the Supreme Court for every Indian. But they thought they were above that law until the court came back and said, no, you're going to have to do it. Now, does that mean that every ICC that's put in works amazingly? No. But now they can't say they won't do it. The Supreme Court, the Kerala High Court, laws have been put in front of them and they've been told, you have to do this. So they can't not do it. Even if it's just a token exercise, they have to do it. These are small incremental changes, but they're happening. You know, WCC did a press conference, the infamous press conference as it's known in Kerala, sometime in 2018. And it was a press conference at which the media, the Kerala media, literally, in the most aggressive fashion, attacked the women members. They attacked us in the Cochin Press Club. You know what I mean? It was an awful state of affairs. It was a really depressing thing to be at and to be a part of, but we went through it. 5 years on, the media in Kerala is a very different place, at least in terms of the way it deals with us, in terms of the fact that it doesn't dismiss us, it doesn't abuse us, it doesn't call us derogatory names. They're actually interested, whether it's a prurient interest or otherwise, they're interested in what we have to say. So that's a change. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I mean, I'm old enough to know that change is slow. I don't want to be patient, but I've learned that we have to be if real change is to come about. The other thing I've learned is that patience is a form of resilience. And it's a form of resilience that I've been taught by the women in the Malayalam film industry. You know, they're strong. They have gone through so much and yet find it in themselves to not bow their heads down. You know, they have a fortitude that's quite inspirational. So yeah, we're in it for the long game. We're not going away.
I'm not able to understand how it must be to be in a situation where every woman seems to have had an experience where somebody is making a physical pass at them. There are recorded incidents in this report about on location shoots for women to have to take family members with them for their security, to have their doors locked because other male members of the film unit would be banging on their doors. In order to enter this industry, Justice Hema writes, it's very clear that women can't get into the Malayalam film industry unless they are willing to pay for the opportunity by having sex. I mean, some of the things that have been recorded based on the experiences of some of the people who've presented in front of these committees, there are demands, physical assaults, violence, and we all know about the power of these famous or rather infamous fan clubs and the online and offline harassment that they can create, they can do. And all of that has been documented. The lack of contracts. I mean, I don't know which one to, start with, because these are all just basics. A lack of contracts that don't tell you what you're going to get paid. So this is a female rights issue. It is a labor issue. There are so many things that are intersecting here, isn't it?
Since for the last week or 8 days or 10 days, the media has concentrated primarily on the sexual harassment aspect of the report. I'm going to put that aside because I think that, one, it's deeply disturbing for me just how prurient the interest is. It's kind of like, after the RG Kar incident, Google searches for rape videos of the victim came up. So there is something deep, really dark and disturbing about that. So I'm going to put that aside. I think enough people have addressed those things. I want to address those other things like the impunity with which the main union in Kerala film industry, it's a union called FEFCA, mistreats its members or disallows people from becoming members and therefore getting a livelihood in the business. I want to talk about how there is no formal arrangement for junior artists in the industry, and therefore they are treated, honestly, the report uses the words worse than slaves. And by the way, this High Court judge is not given to hyperbole. Ms. Valsala Kumari, the IAS officer, is not given to hyperbole. But when they say worse than slaves, somebody is brought to a set at 6 a.m. in the morning, and they are made to stay there till 2 a.m. the next morning. They are not given a place to sit. They are not given a place to change. They are not given food or water on set. They're supposed to provide their own nourishment during the day, all for the privilege of getting maybe 10% of what has been agreed as their fee, because the coordinators, the production controllers, the unions, the producers, they're all sucking money out along the way. So the middlemen suck out most of the money. If this isn't criminal and feudal, I don't know what else you'd call this. In most other decent places on the planet, these people would have been long in jail, right? The instances of demanding membership fees, say from women who want to be hairstylists in the business. First of all, they're told you can't be a hairstylist because women aren't allowed to be hairstylists, apparently.
No, you can't be makeup people. Right?
Oh, no. It used to be with hairstylists also. That has changed slowly. Same. You can't be a makeup artist if you're a woman. Why? Because the union bylaws don't allow it. What kind of union has a bylaw which says women can't be makeup artists? I mean, think about what that says about Kerala and about our people. In the name of membership, They will ask one person for 500 rupees, another person for 5,000 rupees, another person for 35,000 rupees. So nowhere is there a note which says this is the actual membership to join the thing, these are the criteria, this is the compliance, nothing. So there is no actual regulation of these organizations. It's like the Wild West. They're run by men who feel like they can do as they please. Women have had no say whatsoever in these organizations. Very few of them are in positions of power. In fact, almost none. It's interesting. One of our members is a hairstylist who's been complaining from before the Hema Committee Report about the treatment she's had. And she's a very, very experienced hairstylist. She deposed in front of the committee. She's been writing to the union. She's complained to them several times over the last 7 or 8 years. Suddenly yesterday, or maybe day before yesterday, there's a frantic call from the union saying, come for a meeting on the 31st. Why? Why not? Why suddenly do you want to meet her? Right? Why this sudden favor you're doing her? When she's been cut for speaking, she was punished. Thrown out of the industry, hasn't worked in the last 6 years. And all of that's done in an informal, covert fashion. It's not like they write it down somewhere. Oh, we're banning this person.
It seems so. This
right?
banning people is supposed to be a really very, very much used tool, and like you said, it's covert, it's informal, but everybody knows you're not supposed to get any work because you've displeased someone in some fashion.
Everybody's been told not to give you work, and if you do cross that line, then you're also thrown out. You're also banned, right? So we can go into, it's a long report. There's a lot of stuff in there. But most of it, for me, comes down to the fact that this is a very informal, highly unregulated, highly unaccountable group of people who are choosing to use the Malayalam film industry as their personal fiefdom. And they do what they like, and they're answerable to no one. And in that case, one does have to ask the Kerala government what it's been doing all this while. Because it's not like they're blind to all this, right? They're not blind to all this. They know this has been happening. What have they been doing? What have they been thinking? Or are the problems of the women in the film industry not important enough for them, right? It's just like... So I don't, one of the other things they keep saying to us about WCC is, oh, you're just finding fault. We're not a fault-finding mission. We're not a fact-finding mission as well. We're a group of women whose mission really is to find people within the film industry who have a sense of responsibility, who feel responsible to make this a better place to work in for everybody. What's been clear with the Hema report is that terrible things are happening and change is necessary. Terrible things are happening to women, but also terrible things are happening to men.
Yeah.
And it's shocking that the men have put up with this. Yeah. But that's where it becomes very clear that it's not just about gender. It's also about class and caste in Kerala. You know what I mean? In the film industry. That working class men and lower caste men are treated appallingly. The women, of course, are treated even worse.
So what next, Miriam? The Hema Committee makes recommendations. There is the idea of a tribunal put forward because Justice Hema believes the internal complaints committee, which works in corporate India, may not work exactly in that fashion in the film industry because of the nature of the business.
Well, what an indictment, huh?
Yeah,
what she said is the ICCs won't work in the Malayalam film industry because the people charged with running the ICCs are the ones who commit the crimes. Yeah. What a terrible indictment that is.
Yeah.
Right? But I think in terms of what forward, the committee report says a tribunal. My personal view is that a tribunal is not going to be enough. this industry, it encompasses such a vast array of practitioners, right? So you've got physical labor, unskilled technicians, skilled technicians, a whole host of different kinds of skilled technicians, actors, junior artists, writers, beauty and styling professionals, stunt people, musicians, set designers, carpenters, builders, painters, location managers, directors, producers, financiers. It's not like, going into the medical field where it's one group of people, or engineers where it's one group of people. It's a vast array. So I don't think one, however highly placed it is, tribunal is good to deal with all the stuff that comes in. My personal view is that we need a combination of government statutory regulation and a great deal of self-regulation. I am amazed that the Malayalam film industry has no self-regulation at all. At all.
So, okay, so self-regulation, some amount of government regulation via maybe a new policy, certain standards which have to be maintained so that there's no criminal and illegal behavior is not acceptable, and that will come only if the government sets some kind of standard. So maybe a policy of some kind. Self-regulation via all the industry bodies that exist but which need to be revamped.
Yes.
Yeah. And,
Yep.
Vatsala
And most
Kumar-
importantly, in all these things that we do, whether it is self-regulation, new regulation, policy making, we need to have women at the table. We need to have women who are part of the thinking about and the drafting of these new policies and these regulations, right? Otherwise, there's no point. Nothing changes. The same group of power brokers will continue to play musical chairs and nothing ever changes. The Amma office bearers all quitting en masse. I mean, personally to me, I looked at that and I thought, wow, what a cop-out. Easy, isn't it? What a cowardly, craven act.
Yeah.
Your general secretary had to
single
resign
question.
because he was accused
Yeah.
of sexual misconduct. And so all of you decided together that you would all leave this organization, which up until now you told us was so dear to you, and you worked so hard for the interests of artists, and you do all of this for everybody. But suddenly one fine morning you decide you don't want to do this, which means that you don't really want to take any responsibility for making your workspace a better place. You're not interested in change.
But isn't that clear? Because
Oh no, it's very clear to us. But
Yeah, if
I'm
you read
saying
the-
they want
Yeah.
us to believe
Yeah.
that they
Yeah.
did this out of some kind of sense of moral responsibility. Please, pull the other
clear?
leg.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, who
So-
are you kidding? We've watched you over the last 8 years and how you've dealt with victims of sexual misconduct. We've watched
So
you
what-
very closely, and you've done nothing.
So is it very clear that at this point now going forward it will be a Malayalam film industry that is going to be rebuilt in bits and pieces, but rebuilt, reimagined, because I am guessing it cannot go back to what it used to be.
It shouldn't go back. It shouldn't go back. And I think that it is incumbent on people within the industry, it's incumbent on the government to hold those people who are in these positions accountable for what they're doing. When the main union in the film industry indulges in criminal behavior or criminal adjacent behavior, one really has to wonder, a union is meant to protect the rights and welfare of a worker. And here the exact opposite is happening. The rights and welfare of a select few are protected and everybody else is left out to dry. So for me, I think a good starting point is for all the stakeholders in Malayalam cinema to hold some things as sacred. Our love of film, our respect for people, their dignity, their skills, their talent, fairness, egalitarianism. I think once we're agreed on these very, very basic things, it actually becomes easier to find solutions. Collaborating is what all filmmakers do when we make films. So I find it difficult to see why we can't collaborate outside of the film experience to make our workspace a better place.
I have one final question. You teach students, film students, and gender sensitization is something that is important. It was mentioned very unequivocally in this report. Do you see gender sensitization as something that has to be worked on actively, even with young people who are getting into the film business? Or are they more aware? Are they more sensitized about equal rights and gender equality?
You know, this gender thing is a difficult thing in India, in the sense that young people in India are part of this society. They grow up in homes brought up by parents who have attitudes that permeate everything. So most boys are brought up in homes where they are Raja Betas. Their first, their right to everything is unquestioned, right? And they grow up in families where their sisters always take the second place. That's a societal structure. So are young people
More gender
sensitization? Yes, they are, because they grow up in Indian society. Are they as hidebound as a 70-year-old? Maybe not. But they're still very much part of an Indian patriarchal setup. So even in film schools, there is much work to be done on gender.
Miriam, thank you. We'll keep talking, and more power to you and all your members at the WCC. I think this is a historical moment. It may feel extremely emotional and fluid at this point of time, but when we look back, this is a time there'll be a before and after. Thank you very much. We'll keep talking.
Thank you, Anuradha.